Moving on, massive protests have erupted in Pakistan's port city of Gwadar against a shortage of basic necessities like water, electricity. Threats to livelihood from illegal fishing, unnecessary checkpoints. The protests are part of a growing backlash in the country against China's multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road projects. The protests have been organized by civil rights activists, fishermen, the residents of the Gwadar city, a coastal town in the southwest Balochistan province of Pakistan. They say the protests will continue till their demands have been met, which includes eviction of big fishing trawlers, opening of the border with Iran from Panjgur to Gwadar, and the protests are part of a growing discontent with China's presence here, whose port is an integral part of the $60 billion China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project. The port has always been seen as the jewel of the CPEC crown. India has protested against the project because it traverses through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The massive infrastructure project connects China's Xinjiang province with Gwadar port. But in the process, the city has become like a security state, but far from being the harbinger of economic boom. The opposite seems to have happened. Now, residents say their mobility is restricted by security forces. There is unwarranted questioning of their activities. The fishermen complain that the government has issued licenses to Chinese trawlers, as a result of which smaller fishermen are struggling to compete. And for more on this, we're now being joined by senior journalist Emir Shaheen from Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us. Protests against shortage of basic necessities like water and electricity. This protest has gone on for quite a while now. What can you tell us about the situation on ground?
The protest has been going on for quite a while, and it's not just the basic necessities like water and electricity. It's also access. A lot people who are protesting complain about the fact that there are too many checkposts,
right,
on their way, especially some of the roads, the service roads that lead up to villages, nearby villages, they've been blocked, they are not accessible. So it's also, food supplies and other supplies and transportational facilities that are being affected. It's the local people that are not happy about this. There is more or less a kind of a blackout in Pakistani media talking about this, and the reason for this is because CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is is being seen as an extremely important economic factor to revive Pakistan's economy, and that gets priority and precedence over protests, and it's kind of like national security issue when it comes to media as well. So it has been going on. It's been going on internationally as well. It's been raised in front of Chinese embassies, in London, for example. However, in Pakistan, it's not being highlighted as such, and the local people are, it's local journalists who inform us rather than the mainstream media about what's happening on the ground.
Right. Absolutely. Now, the discontent with China's presence here is absolutely evident. What can you tell us about the practical implications of all these protests now?
I think what's going to happen is there's so much hush-hush that we can do regarding this issue. I think this will become an important factor in, the high-ups, the people, the powers that be are going to look at it as a serious issue sooner rather than later. And some of the problems are going to be addressed. Some of the promise, this government has a habit of making a lot of promises and buying time. So I think that's what's going to happen. A lot of promises are going to be made. A lot of time is going to be bought. I'm not really sure if all the concerns of the protesters can be met, because it's an extremely sensitive and high security area. The whole location, because of the insurgency in Balochistan as well. Some of the demands cannot be met. Some of the demands like, eliminating or loosening some of the checkposts, that's not going to happen. And when it comes to, for example, the Sui area, where the Sui gas of Pakistan, Pakistan gets its Sui gas from, the natural gas, that area itself is deprived of those resources. When it comes to the fishing areas near Gwadar, the fishermen are not the number one priority. They don't get the first priority to be able to fish over there. So that kind of injustice, I think, is going to continue. However, I am expecting at least some cosmetic changes to some policies and addressing some of the issues that the protesters are raising, buying more time, giving them more promises. I'm not too sure how much action will be taken.
Right. Also, just for more clarity on this, on that note, do you see this affecting, if at all, having any sort of an impact on the China Belt and Road projects?
Any journalist sitting in Pakistan dare not say anything against CPEC or the fact that it may not be able to fly. I personally actually don't think that it's going to affect because that's not the way things work anymore in Pakistan. Protests can keep taking place. The heads of those protests will be taken in confidence and they'll be catered to. I don't see real practical implication of the rights of the protesters being given or it being able to hamper CPEC. Other things may slow down CPEC, but certainly not the local community. And I don't think the protests are going to actually be able to make an impact because CPEC is bigger, it appears bigger than the rights of the local people in Gwadar.
All right. Emma Shine, thank you so much for joining us with all your inputs on this. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.